Shalom, shalom, most high Christ bless. I am Officer Daniela. I'm here for another tutorial. Today we're going to be in Photoshop. We're going to be working on this thumbnail that I've created and just going in from the beginning to the end of what I did. It's a little unorganized, but Lord's will, you know what I'm saying, just show you my techniques of what I did in order to create this thumbnail. Okay, so let's just start off with a new file, hit new, and for a thumbnail I use 1920 by 1080, 300 ppi. Okay, RGB color because we're creating thumbnails for the web, for devices. So when we're creating thumbnails or when we're creating images for devices, I use RGB. If we're getting ready to create a document that's going to be printed out, say like a flyer or a poster, any of that matter, I use CMYK because it's two different color methods, especially with printing and devices. Devices, you use lights. With printing out flyers and stuff like that, you use ink. So it's just a different color method that we use. Okay, so I use 300 pixels per inch just because I like to give it that crisp look. Okay, you can go as low as 120, but with Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, when they compress your images, it, you know what I'm saying, it takes some of that crisp out. Okay, so I like to do high res, especially when you send it out through through chats and stuff like that. They compress it as well, so you're getting like a double compression, right out the gate. Okay, so 1920 by 1080. Click create. Okay, so this is what you're gonna have. I like to use the preset because with the preset, if you hit Control semicolon or Control apostrophe, with Control semicolon, it doesn't do that. All right, 1 second, because I want to show you. Well, I'm gonna show you here. I'm gonna show you on mine. All right, with when you do a preset, it already comes with your grid. Okay, so the grid, it kind of helps me figure out how and where I want to lay stuff at, right? So this outer layer is the cutoff area that I don't want. I don't want nothing beyond this point. All right, maybe a logo, maybe something like that, or something that's supposed to be over the whole thumbnail. But other than that, I don't want nothing outside of this. All right, and I'm gonna show you this horizontal line. I've created the horizontal line. I'm sorry, the vertical line. I created the vertical line just so I can make sure everything is in center, it's in place. And of course, you're going to see why I use these grids as well as we move forward. Okay, so that's one reason why I like to use the preset. But you can create, as you get more advanced, you can create your own however you want to use it. All right, so we started off with just this layer. What I had in mind was to, let's see, I wanted a grunge background. I wanted it to be, manly, right? So I was looking at this texture. I actually Googled it and placed it on here. And let's see. I grabbed it from Google, I placed it on here. You want to make sure that you get high quality images as well. Let's see. Go ahead and fade out my camera because I want you to see what what I do. I want you to follow along with me. So for this, I make sure that I brought the opacity down. You can kind of play with it because if I boost the opacity up, this is a texture. If you look up texture, yeah, just texture patterns, stuff like that. This is, I believe, this is to some pair of jeans or a cotton cover, something to that effect, right? So, just wanted some texture, give it that grunge feel, okay? But you can adjust it. You can play with the opacity layers. I don't know what they call this, but you want to play around. I usually play around with between screen and multiply to see if it works. But if it don't work, as you saw, I just brought the opacity down to 20. All right. So it shut off all the whites, left a few of the black in there to give it that grunge feel. Right. Then I added some smoke. Added some smoke with my brush. You can hit F5 or go over here to this upper left hand corner to pull out your brush settings. Um, if you do not have smoke brushes, there's some online for free. Just type up smoke brushes for free. Uh, they're gonna be generic smoke brushes, but that's all I use. I don't pay for the brushes that often. Um, so I use my brush. Make sure that your front color is white. Your foreground color is white. You can change it like I just did, or you can hit the D key, in order to bring your foreground color and your background color back to the default color, which is black and white, right? So when I hit D, it switched it over to black because that's the default setting. But I hit X, and now it switches over to white. Okay, so make sure that you have your white selected, and let's see. This layer I was just tightening up everything, right, to give it to lighten it up in certain areas. Like my flow, I keep my flow on 20% because I don't want to add too much to it. All right. So go back to your history. Go back to my history. I'm gonna go back to layer visibility. Okay, because we're going I got it at the setting where I want it to be. Okay. Also, what I forgot to mention, I use my layer mask. Let's disable that. This is what it looks like without the layer mask. Your layer mask, it's a good way. It's a cool way to erase stuff and still go back to fix, what you need to fix. I like to use a layer mask. It uses up some of your PC power. So if you get it like that, I advise that you use the layer mask. Okay. So I'm gonna enable that. Big difference, right? Certain areas it's coming in, certain areas it's not, right? It gives it that dramatic effect, okay? So going back to my smoke, I added some smoke in order to lighten up certain areas, as you can see. And then I actually, I think this is the haze or dust. A lot of, let me fade myself in real quick. A lot of video directors uh, use haze in order to give it that natural feel. Uh, Otherwise, it's going to look computerized. Otherwise, it just takes adding that haze to it, it just gives it that atmosphere. Like, you know what I'm saying? Um, so going back, I added some color to make it look like I said, it's epic, it's dramatic, right? So we want the colors are to clash together to make it look like, you know, action, it's dramatic, right? So how did I get this? How did I get this to work? Um, Still using our brush tool, right? I used a soft brush. Well, let me hit F5. I want to select my soft brush. Okay. You can use the brackets to the brackets that I'm referring to is right next to your P key. The P key, you have a bracket that goes left and right. All right, right to make it bigger, left to make it smaller. Or you can come up here and adjust the size in your pixel. When I started off, I used to hate this because I had to go up here and change it and then look and see what type of size it was or how big it was. And, you know, this would happen. And then I had to go back and, you know, try to fix it. So now I just use the brackets that are located near the P key, your P key. All right, so I adjusted. This is kind of like how I created my flow. Get a new layer. Um, let's see. I'm gonna just eyeball purple. I try to stay along with the branding standards of the colors that we use for this organization. But today I'm gonna just eyeball it. Okay. So I got my purple. Let me turn this off. So now I add the color in as much as I want it. I want it to flow to the gold. Boom. Right. We want to change to color. Bring the opacity down just a little bit because we don't want it too bright. We want to notice that it's there, but we don't, you know what I'm saying? We don't want it to be overpowering. Okay. So this is pretty, like I said, you adjust the opacity, but your layer, the effect on your layer, to have color or have light shining off of something, I either use color or use soft light. It all depends. So like with soft light, it's too dark. It's not giving off that reflective light that I want. So I went ahead and went with color. Okay, it gives it more light, adds more light into to your project. I just adjust it a little bit so it's there, but it's not overpowering. It's just blended in together. Okay, same thing with your yellow or with your gold. Did the same thing there. All right, so let's delete that. All right, so now that's my background. Okay, we're gonna go into the title. Well, the title wasn't the next thing I worked on. The next thing that I worked on, of course, I added the logo to see where I wanted to place it because I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, right? Let's see. I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I added the logo. And of course, I'm gonna show you with the guide what I did. So control or command apostrophe, not apostrophe, sorry, semicolon. All right. So as I was telling you, the logo it's not in the area. It's past the area that I suggest it should stay in, right? Just showing you this because when I'm working, I'm just going with the flow. Okay, not all things is going to be you know, according to science measurements. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna. It was off a little bit because it gave it that feel, and you're gonna understand once I show you. There was somebody right here, so having it right here really didn't fit too well. So I just moved it over a little bit and nudged it over a little bit. Okay. So I started off with the logo, kind of understand like what I wanted to do. Um, with now working with the individual person or people, uh, or just dealing with an object, trying to figure out where to put it. That's where this horizontal line comes in at. Because let's see, do I want it on the left of this, or do I want it on the right of this? Right. So with this object or with this person, um, he's like the lead person, right? In this thumbnail, uh, in this subject of what we're putting out, right? So he's known as the leader or the person that's the elder, right? So we want to make him bigger to symbolize honor, respect. That's we can go as far as back as the Egyptians when they put figures on drawings. They'll make the person like the pharaoh. They'll make the pharaoh bigger than the common people or the slaves to show honor, stuff like that. It goes all the way back at the beginning of time of art. Okay, so I wanted to put him in the middle because I was trying to figure out. I have different people. How am I going to, put them together? And this is an odd number of people because I wanted left and right, one in the middle, right? So first he was in the middle. First I try to let's see, and I'm adjusting his size. Make sure that you click on the layer, right? I have it in a folder. Within this folder is everything grouped up with this object. Okay, excuse me. I'm trying to touch bases on everything as we go. But so I'm selecting this layer because it has all his information in that folder. Okay, and I'm hitting Control T in order to adjust the object or this person, right? Um, Also, with Photoshop, it's a little finicky in this situation because you want to make sure that you can resize uh, in portion um, without, let's see, without holding the Alt key. Sometimes you're able to adjust in portion, just like this one. So holding the Alt key adjusts it in portion this way. And this is what I prefer to use because it keeps it in place. So it won't have to. I don't have to go all the way over here to grab it and put it back in place. It's resized and placed, right? So let's see. So starting out, everything was kind of like this, and when I started adding everybody else, it looked uneven. It was uneven, right? So I was like, man, where am I gonna put this guy? Where am I gonna put this guy? So actually making them bigger and using that method for a person of honor, that kind of helped out the placement. So knowing that helped out this placement. So let's go back. So I made him bigger. Okay. Now, as far as having everything in flow, had everything flow together. It was more so of the rank, right? And I wanted to have a kind of a staggered look, like a V. So that's where these lines came in at. So after I place the lead person in its place, I added the next person and the next two and the next two, right? And I added these guidelines here to flow and give it that V. So that's where these lines come in at, right? So I have this person lined up with this line, these two lined up with this line, these two lined up with this line, and so on and so forth, right? To give it that staggered look, okay? Of course, um, let's see. Let's start with someone. Matter of fact, let me move my camera because I explained something and my camera was in the way. So in this group, okay, I color coded everything for the background, the title, the objects, which are the officers, right? The logo, my adjustment layers, and my check layers, right? So I have everything grouped and, so it would look, somewhat organized, right? In order to change the color, I right click and I can change the color down here at the bottom. So we can change this from green to blue. Okay. You can come up with your own color system, but I kind of have my color system set up in a weird way. But I'm gonna just leave it at that. All right. So within these folders are things that I've grouped together in order to be organized in that folder. So each individual object or officer is in their own folder because within their own folder they have their own effects applied to them. Now, of course, yes, we can do this without the folders, but I prefer to do it this way. Okay, so you can understand what you're doing if you have to go back to edit, because while you're working and trying to be creative, you're not gonna think about that. But then, hey, I need to go back and fix something, right? Now you're going back and the information is all everywhere. You don't have anything organized. So, try to group everything according to title, background, objects, adjustment layers, uh, so on and so forth. All right. So let's back up a little bit. I want to focus more so on the object or the officers, right? So yeah, let's take that off, all right? Control semicolon, all right? So let's turn off all that and let's disable layer mask. Okay, so we're starting off from scratch, and let's see. You got to see my face. Let me adjust this real quick. Let's see. I'm gonna put myself right there. There we go. All right. So we're starting off from scratch. This is you're getting this picture from your camera guy, or you're taking the pictures, however it may be. Prefer that you input your information in RAW. Don't do JPEG, don't do PNG. However, it's going to keep that data. You can't edit that data. Okay. Fortunately, this image is in JPEG, so I'm not able to do as much. Because like all the settings that you have on the camera, you can change if you keep the image in RAW. You can go back and fix stuff later when you save it as RAW. because the information carries over to Photoshop. That's one good thing about Photoshop. Okay. Um, but in this situation, what we're doing is we're cutting out the object out of the picture, and pretty much that's what I did. And I did this with the, I don't know what tool you call this, the quick selection tool. All right, I click on that or hit W, and I'm just focusing on the areas where I want to remove. Excuse me. Now, don't get me wrong. Excuse me. This is a pretty good shot. Okay, so I clicked in the areas, it automatically selected. I didn't really have to do too much cosmetic work. All right, so next I want to do is hit select and mask. All right, first thing first, you want to invert. I'm inverting uh, the selection because once you understand when I do it. All right, so my radius, I play with my radius a little bit. I keep it at 2. To smooth out my selection, I keep it at a 4. It's not too much. I don't want it to smooth it all the way out, then everything looks weird and rounded. Because when you're selecting, it kind of make ridges along the way. So I'm just smoothing out those ridges. Okay. If I zoomed in and into it, you will see what I'm talking about. But and I like to shift the edge. Shifting the edge is going to take the extra outline that you have or fringe around that object. It's going to take some of that out. Okay. Like I said, it's real subtle. So -12 for my shift edge. It's like I said, it's compressing that selection down a little bit to take off that edge. Okay. Uh, and then you want to change selection into new layer with layer mask. Okay. I'll click OK. So now, and then cut off a few things, more so the frizz around the hair, right? So let's go back, Control Z, let's go back. And as you can see, it's cutting off some of that information, right? So let's go back to select. We want to invert. So I want to do 2, well, let's see. So before I do this, let's move this back to 0. Okay. All right, so we want to use this brush, which is called Refine Ed Brush tool. Okay. We want to use this in order to, oh, my bad. Let's invert it first. Okay. No, we're good. We're right. We're on task. My bad. I'm sorry. So what we want to do is use this Refine brush and start in the background and then move in to the hairs, because we want to grab those hairs, right? Boom. Like you see a little bit here, start in the background, move in. So we're telling the brush that this is the information. We want to remove this information out of this object, right? That's the best way I can put it. All right, so I'm starting in the background, going into the hair. We want to move that background out of the hair. Boom. Things are starting to look good now, right? Background, boom, boom. Now it's more tight. It's around the areas that it needs to be. Everything is starting to look a little sharp, right? Okay, so not so much in the color area because, like I said, the color information kind of gets whacked out. But once we go back to radius now, add 2, then 4. And then we're going to shift the edge, -12. Everything starts to fill in. It's just nice and tight, you know. You're not going to have all the extra fringe. Okay. Now these, like I said, you want to have good quality images as well. This doesn't work for low res images because it's kind of hard for the software to read the different colors and the different information that's going on in the image. So you make sure you got high res images. Okay. So new layer with layer mask. It'll click OK. Boom. So now we have our cutout, right? All right. So now we notice we got some fringe around here, right up in here. You want to get rid of that, right? So I'm holding my Alt. There's two ways to do this, right? First, we wanna click on the layer mask, right? Go to Other, hit Minimum, and as you see, Minimum took most of the fringe out, right? Took most of that out. Or you can use your brush tool. Make sure that the settings is on black. Change this to overlay. Make sure it's clicked on your layer mask. And now, let's see. Now you can adjust and you can color the fringe away with just one click of a button. Well, several clicks in this situation. So there's two ways of doing it, okay? Two methods, all right? Also, if you wanna, let me show you the third one. I'm gonna give you a third one. You wanna hold the Alt key or Alt option on a Mac, click on your layer mask, and now it pulls up your layer mask information. So what I just did, it smoothed out just the black. It didn't color over your whites, right? You can also do this with your dodge and burn tool, right? So your burn tool is going to be your mid-tones. Make sure it's at 50, and what you're doing is you're just doing the same thing, right? But to save a few steps, you can just use your brush tool, change it to overlay, boom, you're good. Or you can use your dodge or burn tool. So with your dodge tool, make sure it's at mid-tones or highlights. Like I said, you can play with it, and you color around it, it's going to bring your whites back in, right? So there's different methods, there's different ways to doing it. I'm gonna go back to the brush tool, select overlay, and then color that back out, right? So there's a couple ways of doing this, right? I just messed up the image, but like, just play with it, get a feel for it, all right? So in order to get out of this, you wanna click on just the layer itself, and boom, you're back on it, okay? So now, the next thing I've done was I've adjusted the colors in order for it to fit, like I'm trying to figure out how to put this. I adjusted the colors that I've seen off top that I wanted to deal with, okay? Let me go back to, let me enable my layer mask and go back to this one. Okay, so let's delete that. So I readjusted the colors to what I see that I need to go ahead and fix, right? So the first layer was the reds, because as you see here and here and on the lips, it's a lot of red information, right? Red is going into the skin tone. If you want to adjust the colors in your skin tone, you go more so in the reds. All right, and what I used was hue and saturation layer. Let's go here, click on hue and saturation, and I clicked on this finger, uh, and your droplet will come up in order for you to pick a area that you want to fix, right? So I went over to the lips, or you can go over to the cheeks, hold down your right click button or left click and move it to the left. So what it's going to do is going to deal with your saturation. And I'm going to show you this. So go click on hue saturation, right? Click my finger. I'm going in the lips because it's a lot of information there, right? So I just mess with it, see where, doesn't look too crazy. And boom. And you notice that your reds are selected, the red areas are selected, right? So now, before, after. It's not too much red going on, okay? So let's delete that, get that going. All right, same thing for the blues. The blues is more so the purples, the blues going into the greens, right? You can see it here. It's going into the greens, sky blue, stuff like that, right? So I did the same thing for the blues. I selected, hit my finger, and I selected the purple area, adjusted accordingly, right? So let's go into the blues. I'll change master into blues, that way you can see what I've done. So pretty much in this, it looks like the purple looks more so blue, right? So I wanted the purple to actually look purple. And I desaturated it a little bit because I didn't want it to be too much going on, right? So I desaturated it a little bit, and I also shifted the hue. What you can do here, you can shift the hue to whatever color you want, right? So that's what I did there. Oh, also, you want to make sure that your clipping mask is on. I guess when I created the new layer, it cut off all my clipping mask. So make sure that your clipping mask is on. So that's the difference. Okay, it didn't affect that too much. So in my blues, you see how my purples is starting to be affected. So we want to make sure you click on that layer, change that up. So now it's only focusing on this object, right? All right, so let's see, going back to the blues, we adjusted the layer, right? Adjusted it to where we want it to look, I want it to be a little bit more purple. I think it was negative or plus 19 where I had it, right? It's not too bright, not too crazy going on, right? So next thing is the yellows. I wanted the yellows to pop a little bit more, right? Okay, so let's see. Did the same thing with the yellows. So make sure that clip mask is on. It's only focusing, as you can see, it only affects this here, your object, right? And then I think the next thing I did was sharpen. There's one method that I use to sharpen my objects, right? So normally you can hold Alt, and what Alt is going to do is just create another layer with that same object, right? Or you can hit Control J, it does the same thing, right? So that's why you see copy, right? So there's a couple of lines here that I want to erase out, but we'll go back to that. I ain't worried about that right now. But this is to show you how this is my sharpening technique, okay? I don't know if you can see it right in here, but when I turn it off, it's a little blurry, right? I turn it on, it's a little sharpened, right? So how do we do this? How do we get that method? I'm gonna show you. go, make sure that your layer is selected. I'll go to image first, adjustments, desaturate. You want to make sure that you desaturate because we're focusing on the highlights and the shadows. We're focusing in on that, right? If we do not saturate, it will focus on different colors, different hue, uh, and that's not what we want, right? So let's go to filter, let's go to other, let's go to high pass, and you know, there's no rule of thumb. I go between 1 and 10. I don't jack it up all the way up here because it doesn't make sense. But what I like to do is just a little bit. I don't like to do a whole lot. So say like if you started right here, you don't see no information on this layer, right? So as you move up, as you gradually move up, you start to see stuff come in. That's what it's going to sharpen, okay? So I just don't keep it at 4, 4.5. Between, like I said, between 1 and 10. You don't want it to be too crazy, all right? And last but not least, I change a layer to overlay or soft, depending on how harsh that sharpening is. If it's too harsh, I go to soft light. But for this dramatic effect, I like overlay. All right, I believe that's what I clicked on here. Nope, I did soft light, and I also did 2 of them. Cause so if you copy this layer again, you make it more sharpened. See, that's what I did 2. All right, but for what I did, soft, because I can understand that better because I wanted it to be sharpened, but I didn't want it to be too harsh. Okay, so let's delete these 2. Move that over. All right, select those. All right, so now a burn method. The burn method. Okay, so this is another thing I use in order to give it that dramatic feel. Okay. So in certain areas, let's see. In certain areas, I just want it to burn to give more of a shadow, more of a 3D effect, right? So by doing this, I go to my curves. I go to my curve layer, right? Make sure that this stuff is clipped. Select your clipping mask. So here we're just gonna adjust to color burn, right? Brings the dark out of somebody, right? So now we want to invert it, and we're going to invert by hitting Control I or Command I, right? So it gets away, it turns off that pretty much. Now we're going to use our brush tool. I'm going to use a brush tool by clicking over here at the brush, or I hit B, and now, like I said, with my flow at 20, I'm not trying to do a whole lot, right? So I'm looking at the lights. So if you look at the lights are going this way, right? The yellow, the gold is going this way, the purple's going this way, and then you kind of got some light coming down can't even point. You got some light coming down from up top, right? So you're trying to envision, you're trying to envision on where the shadow should be, right? You're trying to recreate that moment, right? So also make sure that your stuff is, on white because we're coloring over this layer mask, which is black, rare. So let's see. Oh, gotta turn my overlays off. Go back to normal. And now coloring on that area, bringing bringing that effect in just enough in order for everything looks more dramatic, you know what I'm saying? So like if it's shadows, I like to play with the shadows like that, you know, make it pop out more. From the sides, I look at the lighting and try to figure out where it's hitting, if it's hitting this side of the face, and then try to add some shadow to it to make it come out more 3D, you know. Uh, so that is my method on that. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that, and then open that back up. So it's kind of like the same thing I just did, right? So that's my little technique on that. This layer, I made this a little darker to fit the luminosity of the whole thumbnail, right? Make sure that it's selected. And then this one, yep, that's another layer as well. Okay, so I want to make sure that this is selected as well. So you can right click on it, hit create clipping mask, or you can hit Control Alt G or Command Alt Option G in order for it to clip into the object. Okay. Um, so these last two, I used my check layer, my check layers, and we're gonna go into that a little bit. Also, I have a tutorial that's specifically on the check layers, so we're just gonna briefly go over that. So that's pretty much how I adjusted each individual officers or each individual objects in order to fit into this thumbnail. So we're gonna go to the next one. Let's see, first I added Seth, so on and so forth, right? So that's how I added everybody into this thumbnail. All right. So let's go back. Let's turn these off. And let's see. Let's go with the color correction. All right. So let's turn everybody back off. All right. So for the luminosity, okay. I'm looking at my your highlights. You want to see how high and bright everything is with your luminosity, okay? How I got this, you'll have to go check out the other tutorial that I have. But we were briefly going to go over this. This is showing your highlights and your shadows, how they run together, right? So his highlights is a little bit higher. So, and also I'm gonna have everybody else follow after this object, this officer, because he's, like I said, he's the lead officer, right? So I've opened up my curves and I look at certain areas like right here in the forehead and stuff, or even right here where it's just too bright. It's too much information, right? Too much highlight, right? So I take my finger, put it across, and it picks out the certain part. And I'm gonna show you here real quick. My curves, okay, click the finger, let's say here, right? So we're going down and up, right? So it automatically picks that part where I wanna bring it down just a little bit and have it blend in with the luminosity, right? All right, so let's go ahead and delete that. And then, so like for this area, dark, and then as you can see, let's turn that off, turn it back on. So it brings down the information a little bit to match the thumbnail. Had a brain fart just for a second. All right, so I believe so. This is the same thing, which is just uh, yeah, it's just me using a brush, soft brush, and just black, and just coloring certain areas, right? That's what this is. So let's go ahead and revert that or undo that. Okay, so that's how. Let's see. That's how we use the luminosity tool. Okay, did the same thing for each individual object or officer. All right. So the next check layer I used was the color. Okay, so with the color layer, check layer, I wanted to make sure that the purple. My main focus was this purple. I wanted it to blend in with the background. I wanted it to be uniform. I didn't want to have three different color uh, purples going on, right? So of course we had to go back to our blues. I used the hue and saturation layer in order to, because it gives me more colors to deal with, right? Some people use the curve. Me personally, I use the hue and saturation because I can do with the saturation. I can change the color up a little bit in order for it to match the whatever color I want. That's what this tool is for, to make sure that the colors match, right? Because in this scenario, in this thumbnail, we have 8 other objects from different times, different garments, different light angles, different information, and we're trying to blend them together, right? So, like I said, I started off with this person, this object, and make sure that the colors were blended in with the background, right? Of course, like I said, you go to the blues, make sure you highlight, you go to your blues, and with this color layer, let's say, remember the settings. If I turn the saturation up, it changes the information, right? So I'm adjusting so that everything goes together. If I do too much, still, it doesn't match, right? So when you're doing a composition like this, you want to make sure the colors are matching. This is a great tool for that. So if you're adding a person into a background or you're adding objects, make sure that it's fitting the luminosity, the color, and the saturation of the background. Those are 3 major adjustments that you want to make when doing a composite, right? So the yellows, reds. We're gonna go back to the reds here in just a minute. So now everything looks good on the color layer, right? So now the saturation. Okay, and I'm gonna do this, like I said, I'm gonna do this last with the reds, because what I was focused on that was saturated was the reds, mainly in the lips, on the cheek areas, where it was harsh. I was focusing on that, but we're gonna go back to that, okay, in just a moment. All right, so once I got this officer settled, then everybody else followed, right? So same thing with this person. Cut on the luminosity, make sure that he was good. Got the red and blues going on. Really didn't have that much yellow, so I wasn't worried about that. And what we do here, I adjusted his luminosity to mesh in, because we want the light to look like it's going this way. There's a light coming down, and I'm gonna show you that too. We want to make sure that the light is coming down and the lights are going up. All right. So, like I said, still understanding where the lights are going. This is how understanding where the lights are going is going to give you that perspective. It's going to give you that 3D effect, dealing with the shadows and the highlights, right? So, like I said, dealing with luminosity, I just colored around this area in order for it to look like he's coming forward, coming at you. Um, Same thing with the color. I wanted to make sure that the color was blending in. Of course, we already have some shadow here and there. That's where you see the dark areas. But for the most, the information flows together. I'm looking at the information here and it's flowing in with the background, right? Um, and then, of course, the saturation, which, like I said, we're going to go into that, all right? So those methods I use for each individual person, object, officer, however. So that's that layer, right? Then, let's see. Once we get everything together, I start playing with the adjustments. Um, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing that I always mess with is the vibrance. I like to build up the vibrance. And once again, you can go here and go to vibrance. You want to make those colors pop. You want them to stand out, right? So that's the first thing I do. Then I deal with the curves to deal with the shadows and the highlights, right? So I kind of do like a little S curve with the curve. Not so much like too much in the highlights, too much in the, yeah, it's gonna look nasty. So let's bring that back just a little bit in the dark, a little bit in the shadows, in order to, like I said, build that, give it the dramatic 3D effect a little bit, I added some more color, turn the opacity down to 25. I use color, either use a solid color. What I mean by solid color, I would either use, let's get out of that. I will go into it and try to find, like, say like you had a forest. I would try to find like the main color of that forest or that background, and then try to match it with the droplet, the eyedropper tool, and then I will make that an overlay. I'll make that an overlay so it will make sure it will add that color to everything. So it's not just in the background, it's in the front. It's in the front because now that color is going into the object and it makes it look like it's blended more into the image. So that's another method I use. But in this one, I used more so the colors that I already created, which was the purple and the gold, because everything is reflecting off of each other. So I wanted to add that to the objects to make it seem like they're actually in the image, you know? So same thing with here. I'll pass it down to 25. Like I said, if you play around with it, it's gonna be too much. You want it to be enough. You you don't want to put too much in there. Just want it to be enough, right? So I'll put that down to 25. And now for let's go to title, because the last thing I'm gonna do is the saturation, because that was pretty much the last thing I did was the saturation. Okay, so now the title. Uh, is up to your discretion, truthfully. Uh, and I'm gonna show you what I did. But off top, when you're dealing with typography, text, you have to be in the mode of the thumbnail. You don't want to do like for this. This is epic. This is dramatic. This is dealing with men. So you want bold, strong letters, right? Bold, strong letters. Um, this is about as fancy as it's going to get dealing with bold letters. You don't want to have this going on and then you got cursive. You know what I'm saying? The cursive is more feminine. Curves, dealing with curves, is more feminine. It's more so for women. I mean, I said feminine. It's more so for women. It's more girly to deal with curves. Uh, so strong, just like the logo. The logo itself is strong. It it is solid, right? It's bold. So that's what we want to do here. We want to do that same thing here with the title. Okay. So let's go ahead, take off the officers, and let's look at the title. All right. Um, with the title, uh, this is my go-to. I'm not even gonna lie to you. This is my go-to. Either Gotham uh, or League Spartan. Those are my go-to. Just for any text. If it doesn't look right, then I'll start looking elsewhere. That's kind of like what I did with this Lux, um, because I wanted to stand out from my go-to text. So IUIC Oklahoma, everybody knows this IUIC Oklahoma. So I just left my go-to text with that. Now these are officers. This is a title. This is the the epic part about the thumbnail. So I wanted to make it a little fancy, but how we got the little shadows going off and stuff like that. I'm gonna show you how we did that. All right. So let's see. With all the stuff turned off, you just have regular words, right? Just regular words. So, and I think with here, I brought this down to 70. I like to do that to make it look more so within the thumbnail. Like even with the logo, it's not at 100. This is my little rule of thumb. I dropped the opacity down to 80 to make it look like it's in there. I don't want to give it too much white. You know what I'm saying? See, I don't want to give it too much white. I want it to be like it's in the thumbnail. So I dropped down the whites, the text, the logo, just so it can do that, have that effect. All right. So that's what's going on with this here, with the IURC Oklahoma at 70. Um, so let's turn that off. Let's get the focus off of that. So officers, right? I use the Lux, um, which is a little fancy, but it's bold, right? And I just grabbed from the background that grunge texture that we added in the background. I added it to the officers, right? So with the layer mask, I just went in with the soft brush and kind of, you know, colored in certain areas. That way, it won't just be it's right there. It looks like it's off to give it that dramatic feel as well, right? And I added the colors, the same colors from the background. I added it to the text. I did that. I moved it around. As you can see here, I moved it around to make it look like this light is coming off the text, or it's going on the text. Excuse me. Same thing with the yellow to make it look like that yellow is hitting, just reflecting off of the words, right? Um, and I gave it some shadow as well to make it look, like I said, more so fits in the background. Okay, so everything else, we'll cut that off, right? So once I figured that out, I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna give it some shadow. I'm gonna give it. I didn't. There's two ways of doing it. Like I said, it's up to you. But let me cut this off. You can either right click can go to blending options. Let's see, where is it at? There you go. Blending options and go to drop shadow. Drop shadow is going to give you, you know, for this presets, it's going to, you know, give you a little fancy little drop shadow. So what I did, I created my own. All right, and I'm gonna show you that. So pretty much what I did was copy officers, and you know, I did that by holding Alt, dragging it down, or hitting Control J or Command J. All right, and I raster the layer. I raster the layer because, once again, this is a text. This is a text. So I wanted to raster it so I can add effects to it. You cannot add effects to a text. You could do with certain effects, but not. It's editable. You can go back and change, but when you raster, you cannot change it. It's the same thing with the layer mask. You can go back and change that information. If you just erase stuff, you can't go back and fix it, right? So when let's go ahead and do that. Show you better than I can tell you. So I'm gonna hit Control J, and we'll mess with this one here. Right clicked, rasterize. So I have a rasterized thing, right? Then I inverted it, Control I or Command I, inverted it. Went to filter, did more of a motion blur, right? My rule of thumb is no higher than 150, and my angle is at 0. All right, so click OK because I like that setting, and boom, now you have your cool little drop shadow, right? That's pretty much the same thing I done, right? And I adjusted the layer down just a little bit because I don't, like I said, I don't want too much going on. I want it to just be subtle. I want the person to look in the image and find little subtle effects, little subtle things that's going on in the image to keep the person captivated. I don't like to give them a whole lot. You see what I'm saying? So with that, I made the title, and now we're going to move on to the saturation. Saturation was the last thing, just because I had everybody have 8 people in this. You have 8 objects that you're trying to blend together. So with the saturation, like I said, I was focusing on the lips because everybody's lips was red from, you know, after editing the image like I do. So I kicked on my check layer. I looked in the area, and I'm gonna just go ahead and hit the hue saturation, hit my finger, and click on the lips. All right. Now looked at most information. I just kicked it to the left, pretty much. Like I said, you could play with it, but I just kicked it to the left and went back to this and inverted it. You can go here, or you Control I. Then I use my brush tool, make sure that I don't want to do too much. I don't want to take too much out, right? So make sure it's white. Your brush is on white, and now I'm just coloring in certain areas where that red is at. Kind of bring that redness down a little bit. All right. Except mainly on the lips. I don't want nobody have no men especially you don't want them to have high saturation on the lips. All right, just in certain areas. So now I'll turn off that check layer. Turn this off. Very subtle. You know what I'm saying? Very subtle. But it makes a difference. You're taking some of that red away. Okay? Let's go ahead and delete that. And close all this out. And that's pretty much it. And you have the end product. Like I said, you want to play with, you want to adjust everything a little bit. There's no rule of I don't want to add too much information. Too much in it is going to make it real harsh. You want to make it as subtle as possible. You want to make it as natural as possible. Make sure you look at your lighting. Like this one, he had a different lighting than this one. This one, the light was more so up than down. Same thing with this guy. Same thing with this guy. Different lighting, different things that's going on. You want to make sure that you look at all that in order for you to think about placement, where you want to put your people and stuff. Oh yeah, going back to this logo, like I said, with this person right here, it didn't look right. Let me get it. Control semicolon. It didn't, to me, it didn't look right here. So I moved it over just a little bit, and I like it there. I like it there. Same way with the title in the background. It's, excuse me. You're playing with aspect. You're playing with the area that you have, and it is risky, but it's also captivating as well. So, like I said, there's no, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. It's more so playing with it and having an understanding what works with what. At the end of the day, I can't give you no rule of what you're supposed to have. There's different methods to fixing, even what I've done. There's different methods, but whatever works for you. Like I said, you just want to play around. You want to become more proficient in anything that you do. But we're talking about Photoshop. You want to be more proficient and understand how to work your way around Photoshop and what works with what. That is my advice. All right. Practice makes perfect at the end of the day. All right. With that, I say shalom. Masai Christ bless.